happens with these white folks is, some of them, is they end up looking out into this narrative, this anti-white narrative that, like, you're reading from CNN and MSNBC and the historians, the court historians that we see in the schools, universities, etc. And they look for, what does it look like to be in opposition to anti-whiteism? Well, we have had uh, warfare, psychological warfare waged against us for all of our lives, our parents' lives, grandparents' lives, their parents' lives. And so those who want to inflict this injury have cunningly created their own villain. And they have taught the totality of the population that if anybody in any way dresses, talks, looks like this, then all of these things hold true for them. Even though if somebody actually does that, all of those other things don't necessarily have to hold true at all. And that's really what ends up happening. They look out into the world, these white people, and they say, what does it look like? How do I have to dress? What kind of ideas do I have to have? How do I have to talk? What's it like to be in opposition to this, to these power holders, these anti-white oligarchs? And they assume that character in that anti-white narrative. They all end up looking the same. I don't know why everybody doesn't see this happening the way that it happens. But then what ends up happening is exactly what the anti-white oligarchs wanted. And that is that they see these folks that step out there, and it might be just, for example, it might be some white guy who's maybe a carpenter, and he sees the industry going down. He can't get work anymore, wages plummeting, neighborhoods changing, and he is a moral guy, no tickets in his life, never has thought about doing anything horrible to any people, but he made the mistake of deciding to look like a villain in somebody else's narrative. And then when he goes out onto the street corner, and maybe he's been taught that you got to wave certain flags and you've got to say certain things out on that street corner, when he does that, other people who have also grown up in that anti-white narrative in society, they think all of those other things hold true for him, all those other beliefs. He wants to murder off all of the non-white people. He wants to do horrible things to non-white babies. And then, of course, there's that great pushback from people, naturally so, because there's all of this evil associated with this character that this person has willingly taken for themselves. And so that's really, these are a lot of these folks we have redeemed from that character, from that role in the anti-white narrative. They realize, my God, the entire time they feel that they're what we refer to as the biospirit. They realize that this is in total contradiction. This doesn't feel normal to me at all. I feel like I'm playing a character. I'm in this ugly place. And we have, Jeffrey, we have so many, just thousands and thousands of testimonials. Many of them are people saying, I went down this road of playing the villain. I lost my family. I lost my friends. People who listened to me about these things ended up losing their jobs. I lost my job. And then they start going free and they realize, I actually don't hate these other peoples of man. I actually don't like focusing on them every morning I wake up. I actually like focusing on my people. That's why I decided to get involved at all. Protect our children, to stop the teaching white children that they have this sin of evil in them and that the only way they can cleanse themselves or palliate is to wage war on their own people, on themselves, and white flighting into drugs and covering themselves in tattoos and addictions of various types. So they end up coming away. And when you talk to our brothers and sisters out there in the world, just ordinary white folk out in the world, and when you come from a place of morality, of love, and when you say, we're going to put an end to this, there's no, and by the way, this is another thing that we will hear from those who want to remain in this ugly place, is they'll say, oh, well, that's too passive, or that, that's not strong enough. Well, let me tell you what, somebody who loves something with great love and great passion will go to any length of glory to protect it. That's where the desire comes from. You can talk big, you can talk real ugly, you can talk about doing horrible things to people, but when it comes right down to it, say like in a foxhole at war, the person who had all of the horrible things to say, all of the threats of murder for the opposition, and that's all he has, he'll get up and run when the bullets start flying. The guy who's patriotic, who loves his people, who loves his country, he'll stay in that foxhole and he'll continue the fight because it's that love that keeps him there to be brave and to do the heroic things. And that's why we're bringing the best, Jeffrey, of the entire white sympathetic sphere. We have wonderful people who come to Going Free as a consequence, because it really is a way to cull good people who love and who want to get away from the ugliness of somebody else's character into our story where we're the hero and we get to write the script of what that looks like. We have a lot of people who try to say, oh, well, especially over the many years ago, that could never work, Jason. You can't just make your own story up and then it's worked. Now we have many years of evidence of what we used reason and logic to argue was correct. We have anti-white journalists around the Western world, all around this planet, who, upon seeing stickers and flyers, the stuff that we create, go into their articles and talk about they oppose something called anti-whiteism. And then we hear that. Good. Please say that some. And they object to they say they call people anti-whites who say that's and such. Good. Keeps using the concepts that we are teaching you. Keep using all of that because you lose. By the end of the article, every single one, this happens everywhere, languages other than English as well. By the end of the article, the anti-white reporter is looking like the villain that they are, because that's what the concepts reveal.